is if tomorrow morning everyone woke up and said, all right, I will no longer enable the lie. I will no longer believe the lie. If everyone got up tomorrow and said that, the whole energy paradigm, everything would shift, because that's how that would collapse it. But obviously that's not going to happen. But so we prop it up by the negative beliefs we have about ourselves. And I think that these things really need to be addressed, because, if we're going to make a better change in the long run in life, the energy we take into that change, it says what kind of change we will have. As an example, in the 60s, we took emotional energy, idealistic emotional energy, into rebelling against the system. All right. But see, here we are 40, 50 years later, and what we did was the solution that we brought in our rebellion just created the chaos. It continued the chaos. But I mean, however we're going to approach it now, I think we need to think in terms of let's go into this clearly and coherently. Let's recognize what we're dealing with. Let's not just emotionally react. Well,
John, I agree with you in the respect that world government's been admitted. It's being set up publicly by the big mega banks. They have an anti-human eugenics population reduction agenda. And then they separately have pundits saying world government doesn't exist and we're crazy to talk about it. And then people say, I choose not to believe this is happening, like they can just believe something. It's delusional. It's magical thinking, and that will make it the case. Now, I agree with you that the global engineers, the technocrats who study human development, sociology, anthropology, psychology, they do have plans for this awakening. But what I'm saying is people are more and more getting outside the box and seeing the very manipulation itself. So I think there's a real struggle going on right now. From my research, I don't think the ruling class has got this thing in the can yet. I think we're in the fight.
No, they don't have it in the can yet. I agree with that. They don't have it in the can yet. But the deal is, you see, they've dealt with, as long as they've been in existence, from the Romans on, they've dealt with rebellion from the oppressed mass. And then the new empire replaces it. See, so this is why I'm saying on what it is. No, I don't think that they have it in the can. No, I don't. But I think that but from their view of it, we're not necessarily out of control yet. Just because we're upset and we're rebelling and we're going through taking these different emotional positions, to me, that isn't enough. It's the coherency of thinking.
Well, it's basically like a tropism, even with the ruling class themselves. It's like a Groundhog Day, but now it's not the Romans or the Babylonians or the Aztecs. Now it's nuclear weapons, nanotech, and if they don't change the system, they're probably going to end up destroying all of us.
Yes, that's a very realistic possibility. Yes, it is.
Well, I tell you, John, really interesting talking to you. I want to spend just a few minutes here about remembering what happened at Wounded Knee, because this is the anniversary. It's another example of how types of genocide and Holocaust, this is only one part of a larger Holocaust, can be carried out against any group anytime. And these systems do basically gobble up populations. And I mean, as you said, on a wider scale, it's now happening just to our psyches and our humanity. But I mean, closing comments about remembering Wounded Knee.
Well, I think the Wounded Knee, I mean, on one hand, America's looking at it as the final, the history books like the final chapter of the Indian Wars, so to speak. It was an outrageous, act of genocide, but it was consistent with the acts of genocide that had been committed, the 400 years prior to that as it was going on. So it was not an inconsistent act. And I think that that's of serious relevance. It was the last public act, but it wasn't inconsistent with the treatment of the Native people. And it was done because we think differently. This is what I'm going to say. Yeah. See, the Native people, yes, we have the land and they wanted the land and it's about the land, you see, but the real enemy to the industrial ruling class is those who think differently. See, and we think differently. We thought differently then. Our thinking was along the line, no, there's a spirit. We're responsible for how we participate in this life. We're supposed to take care of the earth. This is how we protect the future, and how we protect the past is by how we conduct our past, by how we conduct ourselves now, how we participate as human beings. It's not about ownership and possession. It's about sharing and taking care, and it's about respecting the earth, and it's about spirit, and it's about these. See, so this is the perceptual reality that we came from. This is how we knew and recognized reality. See, this is what was the threat. This is what was the threat. All right, because that industrial ruling class in its shape and form at that time, it exterminates the spiritual relationship to life, exterminate the spiritual perceptional reality. That's what it's been all about. And so that's what Wounded Knee was about. Now, pretty much basically in the contemporary society that we're in, the citizens are the new Indians. But what's interesting, see, but the citizens don't have a spiritual perception of reality. They have a religious perception of reality. So that's why it's going to be easier to push their emotional buttons, all right, and herd them into the corrals. Yeah, if the people don't start to think, to think about the reality of the situation. And one of the things to remember about Wounded Knee 1890, all right, the American citizens are the new Indians. It's your, however we look at it, you're the ones occupying the land. The land's now being, ownership of the land's now being taken from you. Your children's futures are being taken from you. Your contemporary way to have an economic survival is being taken from you. Your access to health care is being taken away from you. Your liberty is being taken away from you. So you're the new Indians. And I think that you should pay attention to history.
And you're right. It's the mainline Christian churches that teach it's the end of the world, lay down, self-fulfilling prophecy. There's nothing that you can do. And it's used, like Hitler used Romans 13, to make people just lay down and take it, and they are scared of people being spiritual. They love it when you're part of their controlled establishment churches, 501c3, and they have the clergy response teams we discovered, where they secretly have most of the preachers on government payroll, just like communist China or Russia. It is so incredibly creepy.
What I call the industrial ruling class. You see, communism, whether it was in Russia, China, capitalism, fascism, Nazism, all of these were global experiments to see which kind of system would best serve the industrial ruling class's purpose for its long-term rights. Capitalism persevered. But they used, like when they got out of the gulags and all they used these other systems, and they floated them for 60, 70 years or whatever, however long they floated them. And then they found that capitalism worked more effectively. But you see, they used, like the Contra wars in South and Central America and the gulags and stuff, they used all of the knowledge they gleaned from these to figure out how they're going to set up their little future.
No, you're right. They actually say they've tested them. They call wars laboratories, and they're fusing it all. Well, your Skype's been a bit choppy today, but your message has been crystal clear. I hope folks go visit your website and learn more from your perspective. John, thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Thanks for having me, man.
Thank you. All right, folks, that is it for this edition of Infowars Nightly News. JohnTrudell.com is where you can learn more about his view and perspective, which I think is certainly one that can help us understand more of what's happening to us. We've got to get outside the box. Great job to the crew. Lord willing, we'll see you back tomorrow, 7 o'clock Central here, for the last Infowars Nightly News of 2011, the year that we kicked off the Nightly News. And we'll see you back, of course, on the radio as well tomorrow at 11 a.m. But that's John Trudell. We'll hopefully get him on the radio via phone line where the audio is even clearer here in the next few weeks. And again, great job to the crew. That's it for this edition of Infowars Nightly News. We'll see you back here tomorrow.